All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to talk today. It is Wednesday, May 8th, and had a meeting this morning, so I had to start the program a little late. Gave me a little more time to prepare, or enough time anyway, I hope, to prepare. Hey, great show yesterday. I really want to pat on the back. Pat Elder was outstanding talking about military poisoning. And it was a little bit of another one of the not so super upbeat topics. Who would have thought young men, mostly some women, poisoned while they're working to serve our country in the way that they think is best in the military, and they're poisoned by the government and never are even afforded treatment. Who'd think that was a depressing topic? Or adding onto it, extrapolating that all of us in the end are guinea pigs to these chemical companies. It's awful. I mean, things are not good. And we'll continue the gloom and doom today. So there's the caption. By the way, call me, please. Really want to talk to you. Haven't gotten a call in weeks. Anyway, maybe it's been months. I don't know. 240-242-5646. You see it right there. 240-242-5646. So ask questions, not all the time, sometimes. Will Biden's arms shipment pause save lives is a question. And then daughters only. And that refers to an article I saw yesterday. It's not quite as, I guess, sober topic. It's kind of serious, actually. I find it very almost distasteful what's happening with a few elite couples deciding that they're going to be certain that they're going to have girls, that they're going to deliver girls. And I think it's fine. If you want to sex select a child, fine. But then adopt the child. Adopt the child who's already alive. If you want a girl, adopt a girl. If you want a boy, adopt a boy. If you're not. And plus, you don't even know if it's going to take. I mean, some, boys turn out to transition to become to change their gender to girls, and some girls transition to change their gender to be boys. So you don't even know for absolute certainty when you guarantee through the selection of the sperm, a tozoa that's going to fertilize your egg, that it's necessarily going to lead to, it'll be a biological male. There's no question, or a biological female, if that's your choice. As it appears, many Americans are choosing now, if they have the choice, if they can choose, they want girls. So yeah, you'll have a biological daughter, but the gender could be male. We just don't know. So those are the two topics, and I'm really going to focus on Israel, as I do so often, Gaza, what's happening there. Also, yesterday I was down, I mentioned this during the conversation with Pat, that I was actually going to go down to the State Department and protest against Israel, and really in specific to call for some kind of accurate reportage from the State Department on the casualties, because we just, I think they're probably as accurate as they're going to be, what Al Jazeera reports. But apparently the U.S. government is keeping under wraps what it believes are the actual casualty numbers. Whatever they are, they're awful. I mean, you can tell just from the photos just how bad things are. All right, yesterday's program, we're just going to go there real quick before I get to some other, to what I wanted to talk about today. So I was going to open with a discussion with Pat, and he really didn't want to talk about Israel, Gaza. He really wanted to talk about his work on poisoning by the military of soldiers. And I got that, and that's what we discussed. But I read this story in Haaretz yesterday morning. I just wanted to touch on it briefly. So the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, trapped by Hamas says yes, because Hamas said, yes, we want that ceasefire. Yes, we'll deliver the hostages. You deliver us some of the prisoners that you have taken, clearly in retaliation against us for the hostages that we took on October 7th. Yes, you just have to stop the killing, get your GD troops out of Gaza right now, which is obviously what they should do. And Israel's, saying, oh, you're not giving us enough. We want every single Hamas terrorist frog marched out of Gaza. And that's the way you're going to get that, Israel, is you're going to go door to door and you're going to kill a few million people. And I think that's kind of what Israel wants. That's why Israel is saying, oh, no, unless you surrender all Hamas, we're going to keep the killing going. So that's not good. But what obviously it's as bad as it can be, but Haaretz is saying that this actually could push Netanyahu in a bad spot, and that maybe, just maybe, finally the government will turn against him. And we are seeing evidence of that. We actually are, at least we're seeing the public, the people, turning against Netanyahu. So that isn't a bad thing. That really isn't. So we'll get to. I'll get to a video of this, what's happening in Israel, or what happened yesterday in response to the decision by Israel to formally reject the offer of ceasefire that was accepted by Hamas. And suffice it to say that Netanyahu is not popular right now in Israel. They want peace. They want an end to the killing. They want the hostages back. They could get the hostages back. And this really does prove, I think, that the Israeli leadership, at a minimum, the Israeli military, at least the generals, the people who make the decisions, they don't want the hostages back. They want more death. They want to just rain more killing in Gaza, and it's horrific. It's again, I've said this, but words fail. Language limits us, and I don't know that language really provides us with the words that we need to express just how morally bankrupt, how wrong the Israeli policy is, led by a man, Netanyahu, who is motivated, apparently, it would certainly seem, by his own self-interest, his own selfishness, his desire to stay out of jail at all costs, because if he had to step down as prime minister, which would almost certainly happen once the war is over, or shall I say it differently, once the killing by Israel is over, even a ceasefire would very likely lead to his ouster. That could result in his going to jail. So he's prepared to sacrifice umpteen number, basically an endless number of Palestinians. That's yesterday at the State Department. Not a huge crowd, but it was still nice to see folks out there calling for the ceasefire, calling for the State Department to come clean and tell us exactly what is happening, what it knows is happening in Gaza. And so far, of course, there's no word, but it was nice to see this. I also went from this rally, and by the way, the man you can see, before I move to the next slide, the gentleman you can see in the blue to the right as you're looking at that screen is Charlie Cooper. He's been on this program before. He will be with me a week from yesterday. So this Tuesday, Charlie will be on. And we're going to talk about what his group is doing to try to promote peace and save Palestinian lives. But also, we're going to, there's a bit of a dispute over whether the Democrats can really be considered in any way allies, in any way pro-life. When I say pro-life, I mean pro-human life, pro-born life, pro-extant individuals. And I don't see it. I don't see it. Charlie has a different view. Certainly we'll entertain it, and we'll maybe get to some kind of agreement or something. After the rally, I headed over to George Washington University. I have to admit, I wasn't sure where it was. It was super close. I think it was probably less than a half mile from the State Department. If you know DC State Department, and this is based on just from yesterday because I didn't know this off the cuff. State Department's over 22nd Street off of Virginia Avenue, very near the mall, near the Museum of African American History. And we were there at the State Department protesting, and from there, there was talk, hey, let's go see the protesters at the encampment. George Washington University had been there for several weeks, and we wanted to show our support and thank them for being heroes. So I asked, hey, where's the encampment? And I kind of got like this incredulous look. Hey, don't you have a phone? And I'm like, yeah, I have a phone, but I don't, well, just go over to George Washington. And then they pointed west, which actually was the wrong direction. West would have been, is towards Georgetown and Georgetown University, although it would also be northwest from there. But in fact, GW was due north, and I had to walk up 23rd Street. Couldn't walk on 22nd. I would have had to walk through the State Department because I was south of it. I was going north. I would have had to walk through the State Department. So I walked up 23rd Street past the State Department and then angled in to see the protest. And there were a bunch, and you can see them in that picture there. That's the picture I took. You can see the tents. And one of the talking points was that, oh, who's giving them all those tents? How do they have all those expensive tents? And I got to tell you, this was not like some sort of fancy, and George Washington University is a pretty expensive university. A lot of the kids who go there are from wealthy backgrounds, wealthy families, many international students as well. These were not like expensive, fancy tents. And Brianna Joy Gray said on her program that they could be purchased for $30 on Amazon. I have no reason to disbelieve her. I would have thought it was a little more. I remember from my camping days, tents were pretty expensive. I think they were more than $30 30, 40 years ago. So it surprises me that they could be had for that little now. But perhaps prices have come down. These are probably made in China, Sri Lanka, or some other place where labor is woefully underpaid. So yeah, maybe you could. But in any event, we're not talking about expensive, fancy gear by any means, and you can even see it looks somewhat shabby there, worse for wear. Before I get into, I'll read real quick, or you can read that sentiment. I just had one other point though. Apparently it kind of came up, this has been a whole thing. Oh, these are outside, they're getting money, they're funded to try to undermine U.S. interests and funded to undermine Israel. Of course, we know all the billionaires are on the Israeli side of it, people like Robert Kraft, and also apparently the counter-protesters at UCLA, the violent aggressors who cleared out or started the process of trying to clear out the UCLA encampment, which the police who stood down while the encampment was being attacked by the pro-Israel counter-protesters with sticks and missiles. The police stood down. Apparently the counter-protesters, were getting money from maybe Jerry Seinfeld's wife, and also from some billionaire, Bill Ackman, whose wife, she was the MIT. She's an MIT professor who, I know there was some scandal involved about how she got her job, whether there was money, and I don't know, it was some big issue that he showed some hypocrisy there. But regardless, it was the money, the seed money that gave these counter-protesters the ability to buy these very disruptive, very aggressive video screens, the very large screens that they were blasting pro-Israel videos, music, and the like, and making the whole scene very unsafe, actually, and very unpleasant. So they were the cause of the problems there, and they were the ones getting money from outside billionaire class people. So this is the sign: you take my water, burn my olive tree, destroy my house, take my job, steal my land, imprison my father, kill my mama, bomb my country, starve, humiliate us all, but I am to blame for my resistance. So I'm like, yeah. People are so upset about these folks who are peacefully camping out. And I was thinking, are they including as part of the resistance October 7? Was October 7 an act of resistance? Now, I can certainly make an argument it was, but the problem with an act of resistance where you kill 1,100 people is a lot of them really are innocent people, and you are ruining other people's lives, and you're taking, it's wrong. It's not self-defense, right? The people who were killed on October 7 who were taken hostage were not the ones who were directly hurting Palestinian people at that moment. That said, I have sympathy. I do have sympathy even for the terrorists, because what are they supposed to do? They've tried everything, and Israel's oppressive, persecutory activities continue. But again, find something else other than killing people. And I do harken back. What about, at least then killing the innocent people? And I know they weren't even trying. Apparently, the goal was not to kill a bunch of innocent ravers. It was more to kill police. It was more to kill military and to take hostages. And I get that. I do. I don't think they're equivalent. I don't think what Hamas did on October 7 is as evil in the, scheme, in context as what Israel is doing now. But my gosh, if I, had family, I would be just so disheartened, so upset. This is what, in the end, when you oppress people, it's like what happened on 9/11 too. It's very similar to the U.S. Worse, 9/11, I suppose, but what Israel's doing is wrong, and innocent people will suffer. And they're suffering right now, and they suffered then. Israelis suffered then and now, and it's terrible. But yeah, if you kill people, you're to blame for that, unless it's in self-defense, unless it's maybe in a war setting where you are being attacked, right? Israeli military, they're wrong. They're doing a terrible, terrible thing, and they shouldn't do it, and they should stop. And there's no defense for that. All right. So I was at the encampment. I thanked some of the kids there. I saw some cops. There were a couple of police walking around. I said, hey, I appreciate that you didn't take down the encampment. I appreciate that you didn't arrest people. I appreciate that you didn't roust everybody out. And one of the officers said to me, you think we really shouldn't have cleared them out? And I'm like, yeah, I think it would have looked awful. I use the same language as the mayor. The objects look terrible. They're not hurting anybody. So yeah, you shouldn't have, and I'm glad you didn't. Well, I spoke, I guess I was a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, ahead of myself or something, because I spoke too soon. Because what happened yesterday was that police actually did clear out. It wasn't even yesterday. It was early this morning. It was today. So the George Washington University encampment was totally shut down by the police. They went in early this morning, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, may have been as late as 4, as one of the protesters said he left around 2, came back at 4 and found the police there, clearing people out, arresting them. And it's awful. It's so sad. And I will absolutely attest, totally peaceful. There's no, and they weren't disrupted. You walk right through the campus. They're not stopping anyone. So the excuses were completely hollow. Why did this happen? Well, it was the Republican Congress. They were holding a hearing. A hearing had been called by the House to find out why MPD, Metropolitan Police Department, hadn't cleared out the encampment and arrested the protesters. And the mayor and the police chief were summoned to speak, to explain. Mayor Bowser and, I'm not sure, I don't remember the police chief. It used to be Kathy Lynch, but now Pamela Smith. Okay. So, they didn't want to go and answer questions, right? They didn't want to have to deal with the Republican Congress. And I frankly don't blame them. I get it. And by the way, there would have been plenty of Democrats piling on. There's a very pro-Israel Zionist from New Jersey. I forget the guy's name now. I can't remember. There's so many friggin' Congress members. I can't remember him. He's a really bad guy from northern New Jersey. Super aggressive Zionist over there. I can't remember all of them. But, it would be a bipartisan attack on the mayor and the chief if they hadn't cleared out the encampment. That said, they shouldn't have. They were so wrong to do it. I get why they didn't want to go to Congress. I get all that concern. This was done in the still of the night, very, very early morning hours, so there wouldn't be wouldn't be media there. The TV crews wouldn't be able to get there quickly. It was all, apparently they also, from the reporting by WTOP, the cameras were kind of blocked. The police put up sort of where they saw, whenever they saw cameras, they immediately were deployed immediately to block them. Folks were taken so quickly they didn't have time to get their cell phones out. So this was all done deliberately with the intention of keeping any visual evidence of it from the public. So just awful, just totally anti-democratic. That's America. That's where we live. That's what we live. That the idea that somehow we're better than these other countries, we get to tell Russia what to do. It's painfully absurd. I mean, it just really is. Yeah. If I did my live stream in Russia, I get arrested. I'm sure. right? They wouldn't put up with this. So we have that. We have that. But in a way, it's meaningless. The policies don't change. The elites, those in charge, their policies don't change. Poor, struggling, and working people continue to get it in the neck. We are practicing ecocide right now. It doesn't matter. The fact that I can speak to you freely doesn't really matter. And I mean, I'm glad I can. I don't want to say it's zero, it's nothing, but it's not impacting in a positive way on government. It just simply isn't. Just like being able to elect a squad didn't impact in a positive way on our government. Just like electing the first black president did not impact on our government. It did not change the trajectory, the pro-military, pro-corporate trajectory, the pro-billionaire class trajectory that our country has been on since, I would say, at least since Reagan. Some people might argue before then. I wouldn't, but you could, with justice. So the police went in there to stop that, to make it, free up Bowser and Chief Smith, Pamela Smith, from having to testify. That's all. Okay. Yeah, we're not in a free society. Action took place hours before Mayor Bowser and Pamela Smith, the police chief, were set to testify in Congress. Gee, what a shock. That triggered a crackdown on student protesting. Of course, the mayor got a nice little shout out from Congressmember Comer. I believe he's from Kentucky. Pleased that what we did led to swift action by Bowser and Smith. Well, he's right, it did. And we will continue to ensure that our nation's capital is safe for us all. Okay, so that's just BS. It was perfectly safe. There were no dangers to anyone. There were no violence. There was no aggression, nothing. The police were not responding to any altercations. There was no attack, no assault of any kind reported. They just went in, cracked some skulls, knocked some people around, and got them out of there and arrested them. We don't live in a democracy. Not free. That's, if I were making a real difference, maybe something would really change. Maybe they would in fact start cracking down on me. Yeah, there it is. Safe for us all. So I wanted to, let's play the video from France 24. Oh no, I'll do this first. I know I'm thinking out loud. Not great. I got into it with more of a family friend, I want to say. I'm not going to give any names, no names, nothing, but as I never do. But I invited a Facebook friend who has posted a lot of very pro-Zionist, very anti-Palestine Facebook posts. And I invited them to come on this program to discuss it because I'd love to get a different viewpoint, one that's really, really different than my own, and maybe see what they're, why they believe what they believe. Would it change my mind? Probably not. I don't see it, but maybe I'd be swayed a little bit that Israel isn't quite as evil and as wrong and as morally bankrupt as I believe. I think that could be possible, maybe, probably unlikely. But I invited them to join me, and they responded that they weren't feeling well and couldn't do it. So I wrote back, I'm sorry, say your name, feel better, and if you can, please try to show some empathy for the Palestinians being killed every day by the Israeli military. So that was about as far as I thought I could go. I didn't want to get, really aggressive or confrontational, but I also wanted to let this person know that I'm reading their posts, and, they're not showing the humanity that I would have hoped from them for people who are being killed, indiscriminately in the thousands, in the tens of thousands. So I got this response back, and I'm going to do an actual response on the show to the response that I got. So this is what they wrote back. And they wrote, "Thanks, Hal, I appreciate it. And back at you. Please try and find empathy for the hostages and their families, as well as those killed." And there you can see in brutalized October 7. It needs to go both ways. So I will show you my response to that. But I don't love this response, right? Because I don't think it's a two-way street necessarily. I think what Israel's doing is far worse. Israel's committing ongoing, and even if you don't think it is, even if you want to say, well, they're kind of equivalent, October 7 and what Israel's doing. I even want to say that, or you want to say, hey, what Hamas did was worse. You want to say that. Okay, you want to believe that? Okay. But what Israel's doing right now is killing more Gazans. It's killing more Palestinians. It's continuing to persecute and oppress Gazans. It's actually now planning, and in fact has gone into Rafah. So Israel right now is killing civilians in very large numbers. I think there were hundreds maybe killed yesterday, dozens at a minimum. So A, I don't like that. B, I don't think that the fact that I may or may not have shown sufficient empathy for the October 7 victims and the hostages, I don't see how that's relevant to the person I'm texting or Facebooking with, messaging with. They're posting right now about how students are being victimized. Pro-Israel students are being victimized. Professors can't speak on campus. So they're talking about ongoing, right now, actions that they believe are unfair. So right now, what's happening in Israel, in Gaza, is Palestinians being killed, not Israelis being killed. Palestinians being killed by Israel. So if your concern is right now because you're saying, oh, these students can't express their pro-Israel viewpoints and professors who speak out against Gaza get shouted down or whatever, or speak out against what Israel's doing in Gaza get shouted down. If that's your view, okay, we can examine those facts and see, or what you believe, proves what you're saying. I would say it's probably not true because the pro-Palestine protesters have been peaceful and the counter-protesters in support of Israel have not. But, okay, yes, we should condemn what's happening right now, regardless of who the victims are. But what's happening right now is that it's in Palestine, they're the ones who aren't safe. They're being actually killed, whether it's on the West Bank or in massive numbers. The greatest death rate in the world right now is in Gaza. So I don't really feel like this is an equivalency in any way. But okay, I'll play ball. And there were a couple of things. I did appreciate, well, I don't say appreciate, the poster didn't say anything about mass rapes or babies being put in ovens, which is good because then I would have had to face the question of whether trying to respond by debunking those false claims. So fortunately, I don't have to do that, which made things maybe a little easier. So I did respond and I said, well, okay, you have a point. I'm willing to accept that because, I'm all about trying to come to some kind of agreement, some kind of middle ground. So I'm like, okay, I think you make a point. And I will try, if I haven't yet, because I don't always say, oh, I feel so bad for the hostages. Things are so bad for the hostages. I feel so bad for the victims. I have talked about this. I do feel bad. Obviously the people who were killed, it's awful, October 7. And the people who perpetrated that massacre, that was a really, really, really bad thing to do. Those are civilians. They weren't all civilians, but the ones who were civilians is awful. I always am going to be siding to a degree. I'm always going to have sympathy for the underdog. Right now, Hamas and Palestine is the underdog. They're the oppressed. They're the victims. It's like if you had some concentration camp escapees who went into some German city and started just killing people. I mean, I'd be like, well, they're concentration camp victims. I mean, what do you, there is such a thing as murder. You're not guilty by reason of insanity. And there's such a thing as self-defense. But being oppressed for a very long time or being cruelly suppressed can, in fact, cause you to lose, empathy. And certainly for those who have harmed you, who are harming you, who are harming your family. So I'm much more understanding, frankly, of even what the Hamas terrorists did than I am for what Israel's doing right now. But all that said, of course, I have great sympathy for those victims. I don't want there to be more. The answer is, Israel, take your boot off the throat of Gaza. And I did say, but I said, I'll make it clear going forward. Let me say this. I'll try to do a better job going forward of expressing my concern for Israeli victims as opposed to Israel's victims, but Israeli, those who are victims who are Israeli. So I'm going to do that right now. And this may not be exactly what my correspondent, my Facebook correspondent, was thinking of, because I think what they were thinking of is I should be condemning Hamas. I should be blaming Hamas. And I do, to a degree. But right now, the decision not to release, the decision that the hostages, the victims, the still living victims, are going to remain victims is due to Israel. It's the current government of Israel that is acting in a manner that will mean that those hostages will not be freed. It is not Hamas. Hamas said, hey, we'll free them. Let's just have that ceasefire. We accept. And Israel's like, no, not good enough. Not good enough. Not sure what the U.S. is going to do about that. I mean, we did hold up the arms shipment, and we'll play a clip from that. But first, let's get to this question of Israeli victims and who's really responsible for them and who's on their side.
Is developing there. We reported earlier about Hamas accepting the ceasefire deal, which was negotiated by Egypt and Qatar. We then reported that Israel had rejected this deal as being a watered-down version and objecting to what the finer detail was. Well, this is the situation in Tel Aviv, and it's replicated across Israel. But
Israel said, Netanyahu said, oh, it's not a fair deal. They're saying we have to get out of Gaza. We're not going to rest until until we've strung up every single Hamas terrorist there is, and it doesn't matter how many hundreds of thousands of Gazans we kill and wound. It doesn't matter. We're just going to keep doing it and doing it. There's collective guilt. They're all responsible anyway. The children, the moms, it doesn't matter. The dads, they're all guilty. The grandparents, they're all guilty. That's the Israeli response. Is that what the Israeli street, and that is the Israeli street, that's actually a street in Tel Aviv, do they agree with that? Do the hostage families? I mean, if your concern, Facebook correspondent, is the families of the victims, the hostages, then you should be training your anger, your ire, your demand for change on the Netanyahu government, because they're the ones who are rejecting the deal that the Israelis themselves want.
This demonstration right now is in Tel Aviv. It began with families of hostages angry that this deal was rejected because they want to see their loved ones brought home from captivity. Don't forget, of course, there's about 100 still held since October the 7th. So these families very angry indeed, joined by an anti-war lobby and many people who are fed up with the situation as it is ongoing, and they're blaming more and more Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his far-right coalition for the situation. This is Tel Aviv. Similar scenes across the country. Let's take a look at our report.
What seemed like a glimmer of hope around a deal many expected to fail, Hamas says it has accepted a ceasefire agreement with Israel, mediated by Qatar and Egypt.
So this was a deal that the Palestinian people welcomed with great joy, because they have been under constant 7-month bombardment, American-made bombs raining down on them, killing them, destroying their homes, destroying their cities, their universities, their hospitals. They were very, very excited. There was hope, both in Gaza City, Rafah, and in Tel Aviv. all taken away by Netanyahu and his government.
Leading Palestinians in Gaza to erupt in celebration only hours after the IDF had ordered them to evacuate the southern region of the enclave.
After Hamas agreed to the mediator's proposal for a ceasefire, the ball is now in the court of the Israeli occupation, whether it will agree to the ceasefire agreement or obstruct it.
But Benjamin Netanyahu says the deal which Hamas said it had accepted is far from Israel's demands, and the Israeli Prime Minister has approved an offensive in eastern Rafah.
All right, so there it is, coming up with claiming it didn't meet the demands. This was a deal that the U.S. said, fine, it's good, do it, sign it. In fact, Blinken went into Tel Aviv and said, this is a good deal. We need Israel to sign it. The implication strongly that Israel had agreed. Well, as soon as it turned out that Hamas actually would take the deal, the Netanyahu government immediately, furiously backpedaled and said, no, we are not going to agree. U.S., sort of to its credit, the United States, the president, sort of to his credit, Joe Biden, is recognizing, right, just how difficult, how dishonest, how slippery Netanyahu is, how he's not trustworthy, how he apparently is lusting for much more Palestinian blood. And as a result, despite his weakness in negotiating, his failure to take on Netanyahu in any meaningful way, despite all of that, Joe Biden did something he has not done before. And if you look at it's from the New York Times, we'll go through this with some specificity. The U.S. withheld 3,500 bombs last week out of concern that they might be used in a major assault against the southern Gaza City, officials said. So first of all, I want you to think about that. 3,500 bombs. That's just, that's so many people it could kill. Those could kill. So much destruction, so many homes. So it's a lot, right? You're thinking, my thought was, wow, well, maybe this is like going to make a real difference. Maybe those 3,500 bombs, are a significant percentage. They're meaningful. By not allowing Israel to have them, at least temporarily, maybe Israel will think 3 times before invading. It'll have fewer support. It'll have less support for its on-the-ground troops because it won't have the planes strafing and bombing the citizens who are unarmed in any event. So I thought, well, maybe this is kind of a good thing. And the goal was to, here's our friend Peter Baker, who I interviewed God knows how many years ago. He paused an arms shipment to prevent the U.S.-made weapons from being used in a long-threatened assault on Rafah. This was done last week, but it was announced last night. So you see it's updated early this morning. So does it make a difference, right? That's sort of the question. Will it make a difference? Did it make a difference? And first of all, no. The answer is no. It's not changing Israel in any way. It's not. They had kind of a less aggressive, supposedly, invasion over the weekend where they closed the Rafah crossing into Egypt, but didn't really do much else. It wasn't really like wild, crazy shooting, killing, massacring the way Israel sometimes goes in. Here, they were a little more circumspect, but now 10 minutes, this was 5:15 today in the UK, so I don't know, do your math. This is a few hours ago. Rafah incursion looms. Some streets look like a ghost town, and again, tens of thousands of Palestinians are on the move again after being ordered to evacuate southern Rafah. 1.5 million people sheltering there, raising the prospect of mass casualties. So holding the bombs back didn't apparently change anything. The Hamas agreement to a ceasefire, which the Israeli street is completely in support of, didn't make any difference. Israel is, at least the Israeli military, the Israeli government is absolutely bound and determined to kill Gazans. I mean, that's what they want to do. They want more casualties. There's no other way to look at it. And it's horrific, it's evil, it's wrong. And again, I come up against the limits of speech. So real quick, let's go to Al Jazeera real quick, reporting the story of, let me see, that is Amir Oren. Amir Oren, you see his picture there. He is a professor, a military expert in Israel. And so even though this is Al Jazeera, right? Al Jazeera is the Arab newspaper, or Arab media, and it's been banned from Israel. I wonder if Amir Oren, who writes for the Haaretz magazine newspaper, which is totally reviled by Netanyahu, I wonder if he'll face some sort of retaliation or reprisal by Bibi. Wouldn't be surprised. Would not surprise, I don't think, anyone if, suddenly Amir Oren got very, very sick. Although what he has to say, well, let's just play what he has to say and we'll see. We'll get that reaction. What was it? 3,500 bombs that weren't delivered. So let's hear the video.
Mr. Oren, I mean, besides this being a symbolic move, as many are describing it, what difference does it actually make to Israel practically on the ground? Because even U.S. officials are saying that the Israeli military has enough weapons supplied by the U.S. and other partners to conduct the Rafah operation if it chooses not to listen to the U.S.'s objections.
All right, so we'll play his response in a second, but what the reporter is saying, obvious, it's clear, but I'll just restate it anyway because it's that important. This ain't going to make a difference. We've already given so much weaponry, so many bombs, so many bullets, so many guns, so many missiles. We've given so much to Israel at this point that 3,500 bombs ain't nothing. It doesn't mean anything anymore. That's how much we've supplied this country. 240-283-7262. I don't know how, seriously, I don't know how do you vote for this guy? How do you vote for Joe Biden? I'm not going to give him a pass or praise, or I'm not going to say you get a pass because you're not Trump. And I'm not going to give him praise because he held up a bomb shipment that doesn't make a difference. So they asked the Amir Oren, this military analyst in Israel, well, what does it matter? So let's hear what his response is.
No battle is the very last one, and no war can end without the government and military being prepared for the next one. And even though one particular action can be executed with whatever you have in stock, you must replenish your stock in order to prepare for Lebanon, for instance, or for another Iranian contingency. So it doesn't have to do only with what is happening tomorrow. You must think about next week and next year.
So Israel is thinking about its next, killing spree. Its next war, whether it's against Lebanon, whether it's against Iran, or most likely, most definitely, its ongoing killing sprees. It's periodic spates, its pogroms against Palestinians. There's no clear break with Israel. It's time for us to go in and protect Gazans. It's just that simple. All right, you're watching Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. Would love to talk to you. 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. Just real quick. So we're not just involved in a war in Israel's, well, it's not really a war, Israel's murderous rampage through Gaza. That's not the only thing we're involved in. We're also supporting endless war, true killing in Ukraine. And how's that going? Not very well. We're actually spending more money in Ukraine. Despite all the attention that our support for Israel is getting, most people are kind of like, meh, with Ukraine. And that's the wrong attitude. It's absolutely the wrong attitude. Now, Russia's not committing genocide. Ukraine isn't committing genocide. It's not quite the same as what Israel's doing. What Israel's doing is worse. But we're supporting this. We're supporting the ongoing destruction of Ukraine. People say, oh, no, we're on Ukraine's side. We're not. This is happening because we're not pushing for peace. We're not pushing for ceasefire. We're not pushing for reasonable borders that both sides can live with. And the reason Russia couldn't live with the previous borders is because we kept pushing east, meaning NATO, Europe. They kept pushing east against Russia. And Russia wants, and understandably so, given their history, a buffer between, Russia and the rest of Europe. So this war we just committed, there's $60 billion, $70 billion to keep fighting it. Ukraine parliament passed this bill for prisoners to join army. So now they're going to the jails because they got no one else. They got those steppe wolves, the 60-plus guys out there, and I guess women too. They lower the age of conscription. Now they're going to, this isn't law yet. The parliament passed a bill. It's got to be signed, but Zelensky will sign it. I don't know. There's apparently some other person who has to approve it. Let's just figure it'll probably go through. Now we're going to just empty the jails and use those. And they're not trained soldiers. They're not going to know what the hell they're doing. Yeah, give them a gun. What could go wrong? I found this story really interesting. I talked about this. This is girls only. I periodically talk about people having kids and fertility and subjects like that. I'm always kind of interested because, to me, I don't really quite get it. I mean, yes, I have 2 kids. I love my children. I'm glad I have my children. But I'm like, I get we're on a dying planet that we're killing ourselves. And it's because of human overpopulation. So, and by the way, when I had my kids who are now in their mid-20s, yes, things were really bad. I'm not saying they were good, because they weren't. It's not like I didn't foresee what we're going through now. But the climate holocaust wasn't as advanced as it is now. We hadn't yet elected George W. Bush. The towers hadn't come down, and we hadn't invaded Iraq. So things were bad. I'm not trying to make excuses and say, well, I didn't know it was going to get as bad as it did. I did. I understood the future was looking really, really dark. But now it's even darker. It's even worse. We're well into the 6th grade. I think it's the 6th grade extinction. If it's not the 5th, it is the 6th grade extinction. We're well into it. This is the Anthropocene age. We are absolutely ripping our mother apart, killing her, burning her up. So you're smart. I'm going to guess. By the way, this is from, do I have my cover? Yeah, let me give you the cover here so you see what I'm talking about. This is from Slate, the Slatest. I got this email and this thing jumped out at me, this headline. Let's see what I just like. Yeah, I got to find it. So many friggin', so many different scenes I have to go through with my live stream. So the parents who want daughters and daughters only. So sex selection. So in the rest of the world, by the way, we'll find out why. In this country, in vitro fertilization, not banned, but sex selection. In other words, you can't, put your sperm in a cup and then swirl it around just to find the little baby male sperms so you can make sure that your child is going to, and get rid of those, or just find the girl sperms. You can't do that in the rest of the world, or much of the rest of the world, but you can do that here. And we'll get into why in a moment. Let me tell you what, it doesn't redound positively on the United States or our healthcare system. But okay, so people use this as, now again, I said this at the beginning, I'll say it again. You want to have daughters? Have daughters. You don't want sons? Don't have sons. Here's how you do it. It's really easy. Adopt. There are children who need homes out there right now. They're alive. They're in this country and they're alive. And they're in other countries and they're alive. And they need a family. So if you want a girl, then adopt a girl. It's not really that hard. So that's my first take on this. My second is, all right, Amy Yin, you're 32 years old, okay? You're obviously, I'm going to say you are obviously very intelligent. You're an engineer. You founded a startup. I mean, wow, that's really impressive. I couldn't do that. I know, I like to think I'm pretty smart. And I don't have those kind of brains. So you're smart, but you don't see, okay, and you live in the Bay Area, which, by the way, I assume, it says you founded in San Francisco. Let's assume that's where you still live. You are in tech, right? So probably you do live in Silicon Valley or San Francisco, in that area. It's falling apart. San Francisco is like a friggin' disaster these days with all the homeless encampments, and the crime rate has gone up. It's not like it used to be. Even when I was there, so beautiful, loved it. You're seeing your world. It's not what it should be. How beautiful. Now, I know you're probably super rich. Damn it, my mouse just fell. I know you're super rich and you've got all that resources. But for most people, things are tough. And even if for you personally, things are really good, and maybe, and I'm going to guess with that startup, maybe it went, you made a few million, you made a pile of it, maybe out of it, maybe even more. You may have enough that you and your children will never be wanting. Do you still really want to bring new life onto a dying planet? Do you not get that? See, I had this conversation once with a relatively young couple, and I spoke to I spoke about this, and they were looking at me like I'm crazy, and I don't get that. How can you not get it? It couldn't be more obvious. Let's see. I missed chat yesterday, so I'm always a little nervous. Is anyone chatting in there? Why did I? It's sort of weird. Like there was chat, now there's no chat. Maybe there is chat. I don't know. I don't want to miss chat. So yeah, I don't get that. And then you're smart, right, Amy Yen? So I'll raise really powerful women who are going to be rock star leaders. How do you know? You don't know that. I mean, this is the kind of thing people say, oh, you say you don't have a kid because they'll contribute to the climate crisis. Maybe they'll solve it. Yeah, maybe. I don't think so. I don't think so. So I'm just like agog at this kind of a story. But also, it doesn't even get into why you would want just girls. But I'll get there too in a second. So the issue about why do America can IVF, in vitro fertilization clinics, why do they allow you to sex select, or why can you in them and you can in the rest of the world? Well, two reasons. One, they're owned by private equity, so they're unregulated. So all new business these days is pretty much unregulated. It's only old legacy manufacturing companies and the like that really have significant regulations, which is very problematic for the rest of us because these kinds of corporations and companies that have a lot of power, a lot of influence, can do whatever the hell they want, and no one can stop them. Now, according to this article, there are two things that are true. One is that they serve a real need. I keep doing that. One is they serve a real need, which I question. Really, what is that need? Do you see? It's like if the need would be if people need to have a child, if they need to give birth, if they need to conceive, but nobody needs that. Here's what you need. You need food. You need energy, clothing, right? Those are things you need. I would argue we need leisure time. I would argue we need love. But you don't need to conceive a child. So I reject that. And of course, I made the point, and I'll go here because it's so expensive. All this stuff is so friggin' expensive, which is, by the way, another reason not to have it. Because having a family shouldn't be a privilege that a few elites have. It should be what people decide they want for themselves and have the ability to do it. Now, because we have such limited, scarce resources, the government policy should be to dissuade people from having more than 2 kids. I think, 2 is fine. You have 2 and we'd have negative population growth because some people aren't going to have children. As long as you have a relatively equal, now the problem is as long as you have a relatively equal number of males and females, if women on average have 2 children or limit themselves to 2, then population will slowly drop. But if suddenly you have a population with lots and lots of women and only a few men, then populations can, then you could start having 2 children per woman. And if most of those are women, the population will grow. So that's not great. That's not ideal. In a time of scarcity, that's not an ideal. I posted in response to this article on social media that I thought, one of my favorite topics was that this was real proof, if we need it. I thought I was being sort of cute and funny. Probably I'm the only one who thought that. Why we need a reduce wealth and income inequality. I mean, just that simple. Because, and let me see if I can get that for you. It just seems so clear to me that this is some kind of a frivolous, it's really a frivolity to sex select your kid and more, and we'll get to it. It just seems like such a frivolity to me. So I said, why we need a mass reduction in wealth and income inequality. And what's interesting about that is the response was, well, I don't get it. Why does that have anything to do with wealth and income inequality? I don't really, what are you even talking about, Al? And so I explain it. When so many young Americans especially face life of struggle, if not outright deprivation, the fact that a small number of young Americans have the time and resources to engage in the rigorous and expensive process, something that's frivolous. And I think wrong, is it wrong-headed? I might take that back. Yeah, you want girls? Fine. Again, adopt. So just a few more from this and then I'll let it go. I'll let you go. So we talked about Amy Yin. Here's Lexi and her husband. Lexi's always wanted girls, and I guess he has 2. She once said the same. It's interesting. She says she has to be identified by a pseudonym because her parents are unaware of her plans. Now that's kind of weird because she says she wants to replicate the close relationship she has with her mom. But if she wants to replicate, how close is the relationship if she doesn't tell her mom, oh yeah, we're going to do IVF. We're going to go spend tens of thousands of dollars at a minimum. And we're that doesn't sound like such a close relationship. But, her husband values empathy, social skills, and kindness, which he values traits more associated with girls. Well, I'm not so sure. I don't know. Are they really more? Girls can be really cruel to each other. There's a lot of meanness in girls. I don't know. Are they less bad than boys? Maybe. It's possible. I'll accept that. So, okay. Again, I'm understanding that argument, right? Okay, I want girls, but do you really go through this trouble? So the other thing is there's such hypocrisy here. I mean, it's not really, are you really doing this because you love children, you want them to be part of your life? No. They signed with a surrogacy agency. So another woman is going to carry and birth their child. So they'll have more time to, according, maybe there's a little snide on the part of the slate writer, I don't know, to rave, travel, and self-actualize without worrying. And pregnancy is dangerous. I mean, it's not like the most dangerous thing, but yes, sometimes women get sick, sometimes they get hurt, that sometimes they die. So you're just offload, and it can certainly be inconvenient. So just offload that on some poor handmaiden. There's too much wealth and income inequality when some people pay others to have their babies for them. That's a major problem. That's a significant issue. No one should be in a situation where they feel any financial pressure to deliver someone else's baby. Everyone should have enough. Nobody should have too much. And if you have enough that you can pay someone else to undergo the pregnancy, then you have too much. This is sort of an example of really society in very, very significant decline. It's very wrong. Is it on a par with genocide? What's happening in Ukraine? No, it's not that bad. But it ain't good. All right, I'll be back tomorrow. You have a great day. Liz Croydon should be on tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Enjoy your afternoon.